My name's Ethan. I'm 26, live in a quiet suburb outside Portland, and work as a freelance editor. Nothing flashy. Most days, I'm in sweats by noon, answering emails, tweaking manuscripts, and watching the sky change through my kitchen window. Life has been steady, calm, predictable. A little too quiet, if I'm honest. The kind of quiet that creeps into your bones and makes you forget you were ever part of anything bigger. A few months ago, I started helping my neighbor across the street, Dana. She's in her early 40s, recently divorced, and lives alone in the house she once shared with her husband and son. Her son, Mason, moved to California for college last fall, and her ex-husband, well, from what I gathered, he left more than just the house behind when he moved out. I knew Dana in passing for years. Friendly waves from the driveway, quick exchanges while pulling trash bins to the curb. But we only started talking more when her Wi-Fi went out one afternoon and she knocked on my door, asking if I could take a look. I wasn't a tech guy, but I got her back online, and from then on, I became the unofficial fix-it guy for everything she didn't want to deal with herself. Leaky faucet, new router, TV setup, you name it. That night started like a dozen others. She'd asked if I could help mount a new shelf in her home office. I walked over around 7 p.m. She was wearing jeans and a soft gray sweatshirt, her hair pulled up messily, a pencil stuck behind her ear like she'd just been drawing something. She greeted me with that half-smile she always wore, part shy, part tired, and led me inside. The shelf took maybe 20 minutes. She insisted on making tea while I worked, and we ended up sitting at her kitchen island afterward. The conversation, as usual, started light: neighborhood gossip, weather complaints, jokes about aging routers and bad coffee. But slowly, it dipped into something softer. She mentioned missing Mason, mentioned that silence felt heavier than it used to. "It's like, I spent 2 decades being needed," she said, stirring honey into her tea. "And now the house feels like it's waiting for someone to come home, but no one ever does." I nodded. "I get it. Sometimes I look around and wonder if I'm living or just filling space." She looked up, really looked at me then. "That's exactly it," she said. We didn't talk much after that. Just sipped in silence, the kind that doesn't feel awkward, just full. When I left, she thanked me with a hand on my arm. A brief touch, but one that stayed with me. I walked across the street, hands in my pockets, and turned to glance back. Her kitchen light was still on, and through the window, I saw her standing there alone, both palms wrapped around her mug like she was trying to hold on to its warmth. I took a long shower, tried reading, even opened Netflix. But I couldn't shake the look in her eyes when she said that line. "Now the house feels like it's waiting for someone to come home." And then, at 2:08 a.m., my phone buzzed. "Dana, I can't sleep. Can I tell you why?" I sat up in bed, blinking at the screen. My room was dark except for the blue glow from my phone. I stared at the message, not sure if I should be surprised, worried, or something else entirely. 1,000 thoughts ran through my head. Was she okay? Did she need something? Was this an accident? And then came the quiet realization. This wasn't about a broken shelf or Wi-Fi. I replied, "Me, of course. I'm awake." No response for a minute. Then, "Dana, I don't know why I sent that. I'm sorry. You probably think I'm crazy." "Me, I don't. Not at all. Dana, it's just been a weird night, a weird few months, and I realized I didn't have anyone to say this to." "Me, say what?" There was a pause. 2 minutes, then 5. I thought maybe she'd changed her mind. But then, "Dana, that sometimes I don't know who I am anymore." that I go to bed every night and feel like I'm vanishing. That tonight, I needed someone to hear me, and you were the only one I could think of. I sat there, stunned, phone trembling slightly in my hand. Her words weren't romantic. They weren't flirty. They were raw, like she had pulled them straight from a place she'd kept locked for years. And I knew this wasn't the kind of message you ignore or respond to lightly. Me, I hear you, Dana. I really do. Do you want to talk? I can come over if you want. Took longer this time. But finally, Dana, no, it's late. I just needed to know someone was out there. That I wasn't totally invisible. Me, you're not invisible. Not even close. Dana, thank you, Ethan. Good night. I stared at the last message for a long time before finally putting my phone down. But sleep didn't come, because her words had woken something in me. Something I didn't realize had been sleeping too. The next morning, I kept replaying her message in my mind. Not just the words, but the weight behind them. I feel like I'm vanishing. I had no idea Dana felt that way, not really. She always seemed composed, warm but guarded. Someone who kept herself just far enough from the edge so no one could see how deep the drop was. But last night, at 2 a.m., she let herself step closer, and she chose me to witness it. I thought about texting her, but I didn't. I didn't want to push. Maybe she regretted it. Maybe it was a moment of vulnerability she didn't want to acknowledge in the daylight. Still, I watched her house from my window while I drank my coffee. Her kitchen light flicked on just before 9. I caught a glimpse of her moving past the window, hair tied back, dressed casually, mug in hand. She looked normal, like nothing had happened. But I knew something had. That evening, just as the sun started sliding below the roofs of our street, I heard a knock at my door. I opened it to find Dana standing there with a Tupperware container in her hands and a nervous smile on her face. "Hi," she said gently. "Hi," I replied, stepping aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, setting the container on my kitchen counter. "It's just some pasta. I made too much." I smiled. "You always make too much." She let out a soft laugh, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "It's a habit I haven't broken. For years I cooked for 3, then 2. Now, well, I still cook like they're coming back." I leaned against the counter. "You okay?" She hesitated for a moment. "About last night." "You don't have to explain." "No, I want to," she said. "I didn't mean to dump that on you. Sometimes the quiet in that house feels like it's swallowing me. And you've been kind. I trust you." I nodded. "You weren't dumping anything. I was glad you reached out." She looked at me, really looked. Then her expression softened. "Do you have plans tonight?" "Just this pasta, apparently." She smiled. "Do you want to come over? We could watch something. Or not talk. Or talk too much. Whatever feels better." "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." That evening was nothing extraordinary on the surface. We sat on her couch, a bottle of red wine between us, a documentary humming in the background that neither of us really paid attention to. The lights were low, the fireplace flickering lazily. She curled her feet under herself, wearing a long cardigan and leggings, hair down and relaxed. There was something different about her that night. Not makeup or clothes, just presence. She wasn't trying to play host. She wasn't guarding herself. She was just Dana. We started talking. Not deep stuff at first. Movies. Favorite travel spots. How terrible online dating was. But then it crept back in. those moments when the laughter slowed and the silences thickened. I used to be a person, she said quietly, like a whole one, before everything, before the divorce, before Mason left, before the house started echoing. You still are, I said. She turned her head toward me, her eyes soft but tired. Sometimes I don't feel like it. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a role. The woman who keeps the house clean. The one who remembers everyone's birthdays. The one who holds everything together while quietly falling apart. You're not alone, I said. I know, she whispered, but it feels that way most nights. We didn't touch. We didn't cross any lines. But we didn't need to. That night wasn't about closeness in the physical sense, it was about recognition. About being seen, truly seen, when you've been invisible for too long. As I stood to leave, she walked me to the door. The porch light buzzed faintly above us. The street was silent. Thank you, she said. For what? For listening. For not being afraid of me falling apart. I smiled. You're not falling apart. You're just figuring out how to be whole again. She stepped forward slightly, just enough to close the space between us. Not fully, but closer than before. You make it easier to breathe, she said softly, and for a second, I thought she might reach for my hand. But she didn't, and I didn't either. Instead, we just stood there, eyes searching, something unsaid curling in the air between us like smoke. I'll see you soon, I said. Yeah, she replied. Soon. And as I walked home across the street, I could feel it. Something had changed. Not everything. Not yet. But something had cracked open. Not broken, just opened. I couldn't sleep that night either. The next few days were quiet, but not distant. Dana and I didn't text much, just the occasional check-in. A picture of her dog sprawled on the couch. Hope your edits aren't driving you crazy message from her during one of my long working nights. But something had shifted beneath the surface. We were orbiting each other differently now. Closer, warmer, like gravity had subtly changed, and we hadn't quite acknowledged it aloud. The next time I saw her was Friday evening. She called and asked if I could help her move some boxes in the garage. Nothing urgent, she said. Just things I've been putting off. I told her I'd be over in 10. When I arrived, she was already waiting outside in a light sweater, her hair tied back, barefoot on the porch. It's not really about the boxes, she said with a small smile. I just wanted company. I followed her inside, and we ended up going through old storage bins she hadn't opened in years. Photos of Mason as a toddler, dusty art supplies, half-finished journals from her college days. We sat on the concrete floor of the garage, our knees nearly touching, flipping through memories that weren't mine but somehow felt intimate all the same. She held up an old photo of herself on a beach, hair windblown, holding a drink and laughing into the sun. That was me at 23, she said, smiling wistfully. God, I thought I had everything figured out. You looked happy. I was. I had no idea what was coming. I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. Later, she made dinner, nothing fancy, just roasted vegetables and salmon with lemon. We ate at her small kitchen table, soft music playing low in the background. I noticed she dimmed the lights and lit a candle, maybe without realizing it. Or maybe she did realize it. Conversation that night felt different, like both of us had stopped filtering ourselves. We talked about what scared us, about time and aging, and how you can be surrounded by people and still feel like you're shouting into an empty room. I used to think, Dana said, running her fingers along the rim of her wine glass. That once you hit 40, everything settles. That the pain and chaos of your 20s and 30s gives way to calm. But that's not true. You just get better at hiding the ache. You shouldn't have to, I said. She looked up at me. Sometimes I wish someone would just really see me. Not as someone's mom. Not as the ex-wife. Just me. Dana. The person under all that. I do, I said before I could stop myself. I see you. She didn't look away. Silence stretched between us. Not awkward, but charged. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, then back up. I could feel the tension coil tighter, breath slow. And then she stood up. Come with me, she said quietly. I followed her down the hallway, into the living room, where the fireplace still glowed from earlier. She sat on the rug and motioned for me to join her. I did, cross-legged beside her, the warmth from the flames soft on my skin. She looked at me, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you ever feel like you're holding your breath all the time? Like if you finally exhaled, everything might fall apart. Yeah, I said. I do. She leaned closer, our shoulders now touching. Her hand reached out slowly, brushing mine. This feels wrong, she whispered. But it also feels like the first thing that's made sense in months. I turned toward her. Our faces were inches apart. I could feel her breath, warm and trembling. Tell me to stop, I said. She didn't, so I kissed her. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't clumsy. It was quiet and slow, like something we had both imagined but never dared to voice until now. Her fingers found the side of my neck, my hand resting gently on her back. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Everything we tried to suppress had finally surfaced, and it felt like relief. When we finally pulled away, she leaned her forehead against mine and closed her eyes. I shouldn't have, she murmured. But you did, I replied, and she nodded, not in regret, but in acknowledgement, like something had finally unraveled inside her, and she wasn't going to pretend otherwise. That night I didn't leave. We didn't rush anything. We just lay there on the rug, side by side, staring at the fire, her head resting lightly on my shoulder, my fingers tracing idle shapes along her forearm. It wasn't about lust. It was about stillness, about not feeling alone for the first time in a long while. Around 3 a.m., she whispered, I didn't expect you to stay. I didn't expect to want to, I replied. She smiled softly. But I'm glad you did. I kissed her forehead. Me too. Outside, the world kept turning. But in that room, everything had stopped, just long enough for us to feel alive again. The sun was just beginning to tint the sky when I woke up. Dana was still asleep beside me, curled under the throw blanket we'd pulled off the couch sometime during the night. Her breathing was steady, face soft in the half-light. For a moment, everything felt impossibly still. I didn't want to move, not because I was afraid of waking her, but because I wasn't ready to return to the version of the world that existed before last night. But eventually she stirred. She opened her eyes slowly, meeting mine with a kind of quiet acceptance, like she'd already made peace with the fact that the moment couldn't last forever. Morning, I said gently. She gave me a small smile. Morning. Neither of us moved right away. Her hand rested on my chest, her thumb brushing absent-mindedly over my shirt. There were no big declarations, no regret, just a fragile calm that lingered between us like the last note of a song that didn't want to end. After a while, we stood up, wordlessly tidying the room, folding the blanket, fixing the pillows, as if trying to reset the space to something neutral, something less charged. The fire had gone out hours ago, but the warmth still clung to the room. Or maybe it was just us. In the kitchen, she brewed coffee while I leaned against the counter. The silence was comfortable again, but different, heavier. She slid a mug toward me and stood across the island, hands wrapped around her own. "What happens now?" she asked softly. I didn't have an answer. I don't think she really expected one. She was voicing the same question I'd been holding in my chest since the second our lips touched. "Nothing has to happen," I finally said. "Not if you don't want it to." "That's just it," she replied, eyes locked on mine. "I don't know what I want. Last night, it wasn't planned. It wasn't calculated. But it felt," she paused, "real. Too real." "It was," I said. "It is." She nodded, blinking a few times, like she was holding something back. But real doesn't always mean simple. "I'm not asking for simple," I told her. "I'm just asking for honesty. Whatever you feel, even if it changes tomorrow." Dana stepped around the counter and stopped in front of me, looking up. "Then here's the truth," she said. "I felt invisible for a long time, like I've been walking through my own life with no reflection. Last night you saw me, not as a neighbor, not as Mason's mom, not as someone who needs help fixing shelves. Just me. And that terrified me. But it also made me feel alive again." I reached for her hand. "You don't have to disappear anymore." She smiled small, almost sad. "I wish it were that easy." That day we didn't kiss again. We didn't touch in any lingering way. We just sat outside for a while, drinking coffee on her back porch, watching the wind move through the trees. The same porch where I once sat after chasing a raccoon from her basement, back when everything between us was simple and clean. But life doesn't stay clean, and sometimes simplicity is overrated. Over the next week, we didn't speak much. No long texts, no 2 a.m. messages, just occasional check-ins. I sensed she was retreating, not out of guilt but caution. She needed space to breathe, and I gave it to her. One evening, I saw her out front, trimming the hedges. She waved. I waved back. Nothing more. The key moment came the following Saturday, when I was heading out for groceries. As I passed her house, she stepped out onto the porch, her dog trailing behind. She looked like she wanted to say something, but instead just smiled and said, "Hi." "Hey," I replied. We stood there for a moment, the spring breeze brushing between us. Then, just as I turned to walk away, she said, "Ethan." "Yeah." She hesitated. "Thank you for being there that night." "You don't need to thank me." "I do," she said, "because you listened when I didn't even know how to ask." I nodded once. "I'll always listen." She held my gaze, and for a second, I thought she might cry, but she didn't. She just smiled, softly, gently, like someone finally learning how to carry something fragile without dropping it. Weeks passed. We both settled back into routines. Life didn't implode. There was no scandal, no blow-up, just the quiet knowledge of what had happened and what it had meant. Sometimes I saw her walking in the mornings, hoodie pulled tight, earbuds in. Other times I'd spot her reading by the window, the soft lamplight behind her. She never texted again at 2 a.m. She didn't need to. That night had done what it needed to do. It reminded her that she existed, that she could still feel, that someone still saw her. And me? I didn't fall in love. Not in the way people write songs about. But I came to care for her deeply. She reminded me that connection doesn't always arrive in perfect timing or clean packages. Sometimes it comes when someone sends a message in the dark and hopes anyone, answers. That night, she didn't ask me to save her. She just asked me to listen. And I did. And maybe sometimes that's enough.